Well, defining a problem is about describing it in the pertinent dimensions, what matters. It's because it's often unclear, even to us, what are all the aspects of the problem, not to mention others, like potential team misalignments. It's so easy to have a misunderstanding or different conceptions of like what really is the problem and how to call it. And how do we do it? Well, we use a template. That's an easy one, this one, relatively easy. And we get it on paper very quickly. This is what we do in consulting projects, and I do recommend you to put it on paper or on the screen as fast as possible to discuss it. And writing a problem definition is iterative. You may need to revise it many times, the specific wording, and also as we saw, like as you discover new information. Now, does it mean that we should start, after defining the problem, we should start breaking it down, structuring it to solve it? What do you think? We put it on paper. Everybody agrees that's the problem. Is it time to go to step number 2? What do you think? I see some scratching heads and so on. Well, I can just give you one advice that not yet, right? Because you have to choose your problems carefully. Once they are defined, it's important to think about those questions. Is it worth solving this problem at all? Like, what happens if it remains unsolved? Right? If we have a few complaints, but they are very, let's say, sporadic and a small, very small part of our customer base, right? Is it worth like getting to change things and embarking on a journey? So this is one example. How much effort and resources do we estimate to solve it? Now that it's on paper, we can discuss about it. Like, let's discuss what would it take to solve it, right? How much resource? Is there a better resource allocation? Sometimes or often there is. Is it a new or old problem? And if old, what were the key barriers to solving it? Why is it still unsolved? Maybe there is a solution already and it's just waiting for implementation, and you don't want to do the same project again, which happens sometimes incredibly, right? You get to the same solution that people already got before you. Or is the problem actually many unrelated or related problems? So it's time to also disaggregate and see like, okay, we're talking about 2 different things that are combined here. Okay, so in short, pick your battles and don't jump into, of course, every single one after defining it. Then if I may, let me walk you through a little bit the template of a problem definition. Okay, when solving a problem, first consider the context, the situation, right? A clear snapshot, what is happening, so everybody is on the same page. It's just a brief synthesis of the context. And then we go for the complication, which highlights what is the pressing issue, what happened that instigated and motivated the project. Why do we have to address it right now? And consultants love writing down situation and complication. They do it already in the project proposals. For instance, BCG has an example for us here in a public project. It's available online if you're interested, but it's highlighting Sweden's challenges and complication. Right, you can see here. You don't need to read everything. It's just to show you how it looks like, right? It's simple, very simple page. Now, after the situation and complication, we have a bunch of other dimensions that I'm going to show to you here. Like I'm covering it quickly so that we can move on. The question, we might have 2 types, the diagnosis question and the design question, right? What's happening and what to do about it. Okay? One is the why, the other one is the what next, right? And here we try to use these SMART principles, so they are very well defined, they are specific, they are measurable, they are actionable and relevant, time-bound, all those things that you probably heard about. Then we have the success criteria, where we can put a bit more in detail what will mean success for that particular problem to be solved. The scope and constraints, what can we touch, what can we not touch? Stakeholders, who is involved, who will be implicated, and benchmarking. We like at Highbridge to add that to the problem statement. That's not the usual, but we like it because a lot of times, very often, the problem has been already solved for you by someone else, somewhere. So a little bit of research goes a long way, right? And even asking AI and asking it for advice, it can bring up relevant ideas for you. By the way, AI helps us a lot in many stages of problem solving. I'm going to mention that as well. But it doesn't do it for you yet completely. Okay, now that you know those dimensions, let me ask you, how well defined is the problem you thought about? Is it covering the dimensions that we just projected, right? Those ones, or not yet? The faster you type, the faster we move on. Clearly not. Okay, not a problem. Now there's at least some suggestions. Anyone else? Not entirely. Partially. Okay. So again, like, please feel free to participate. It's helpful also to share your experiences and also see where the group stands. I hope you can also share in the chat. Yes, so it's not only important to define it well, but write it down, okay? Because it's not only for you. Normally, you're solving a problem in teams, or at least you want to give visibility to others when you're solving a problem. Yeah, the problem is the dimensions are not independent from each other. Yes, you have a little bit of success criteria in the question, right? You might have a little bit of scope and constraints in the complication, but I can tell you that it's even if they overlap a little bit, it's very helpful. Okay, let me give you an example of a problem definition. And this one is personal because my younger sister is an architect in Rio, Brazil, and she wanted to expand the market for interior design. So offering interior design services to lower income families in Brazil. And when she mentioned that, I almost started giving her advice, right? Like randomly, like, oh, you should make it cheaper because of this, what you can do, and have you thought about this, and so on. It's the advice monster that we all have in ourselves, right? But then I remembered, well, wait a second. I teach problem-solving methodology. So instead of just jumping into the conclusion, maybe I can explore in a structured way and consider all the factors that are in play here. And that's what we did. I hopped on a call with my sister and I interviewed her. And we came up with this. I will not read everything to you, but you can check it out and have an example of what it would look like, right? I will read just the questions, right? Why are the Brazilian lower income families not seeking and purchasing interior design services? And then a secondary question is like, what makes a project expensive for them, right? Because price is, of course, a very big issue. We know that from our experience. And the design questions is how to create an attractive interior design offering for lower income families that is 50 to 70% cheaper, but also high quality. And how to make the segment represent 50% of Amanda's clients, my sister, by the end of 2024. Okay, so why 50 to 70%? Well, this is based on the experience, on a bit of client reaction. So you can already, maybe even before you start the exploration, you can put a hypothesis there that this is a good, let's say, target, right? You might find out that it's a bad target later on. It's okay, but that's our initial thought. Okay, now, when you're defining a problem, sometimes it's good to take a look at the data, but very briefly, like just to have an idea and to learn a bit more, or even have like conversations, of course, right? Data visualization helps because not to deep dive into analysis at this stage, but to gain more insight around the context, so to answer the problem definition. All right, so if you're still with me, let's just wrap up this one. The advice is slow down, especially in the beginning of problem solving, because we always have stress and pressure, and this can hinder the early stages of problem solving. So taking the time to define problems well saves 10 times more time later on. So avoid rushing, bring others on board, right? Always like treat your stakeholders as partners, bring your internal colleagues and sometimes even your external clients in this process. So everybody's involved since the start. Be optimistic. Sometimes we're solving difficult, daunting problems, but one step at a time, right? Maybe you cannot solve it completely, but you still can solve it partially and add value. So having this can-do attitude. Be ready to share your beliefs, right? Challenge the assumptions, because a lot of issues are misdiagnosed and the world is changing fast. So maybe a root cause that was true 5 years ago is not true anymore for the same problem. And we have to revisit things and break some beliefs, right? So stay curious and skeptical and revisit throughout the projects, right? Once again, I often find it super beneficial to check the problem statement periodically, 3 weeks after the project starts, 6 weeks, and so on, because this helps avoiding scope creep, like changing the, like expanding the scope, changing focus, and losing sight of the target and the question we set out to answer.